Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol nihiyeh b'dvarai. Okay, good morning, Yidden. B'chaz Hashem, we jump back in Messiah to the Shmai to Torah and Beis. Let's do sponsorships quickly. This class, this year today, is sponsored by Yitzchak Gedaliah ben Ilanit for the Schus of Menashe Gabriel ben Chava and Avram Shlomo ben Ilanit, and by Zev Klein, nishmas, his parents of Bryndel, Simcha, and Ya'akov, and Yeshעיהו. Also for shidduchim for Yehudis, Adina, Elisheva, Rochel, Dovid ben Fayga, Kayla, Yonatan, Shimon ben Hadassah, Ronit, Netanel ben Meechal, Mahnaz, Dovid ben Yal, Noach, Avram ben Rochel, Zev ben Rivka, Bryndel, and all the singles in Am Yisrael. Also dedicated as a schus for Shalema for Chaim Yehoshua ben Chaya. Was it Chaya? I just exited that thing. Ben Chaya Miriam. We should hear Besuras Tevis for all of Am Yisrael, Be'ezras Hashem. Okay. So with Hashem's help, we will continue with Torah and Beis, which we began at the second part of yesterday's shir. And just a quick recap, the Rebbe is talking about the Mishnah Pirkei Avos of Reb Chanina ben Chanichai, who says that a person who stays up late at night and walks on a path alone, and his heart invariably turns toward batala, toward bittul Torah, or thoughts that are not filled with Yerushalayim and connection to Hashem. If anything should happen to that person, things were very dangerous back in the day. That person has forfeited their shmira because they're not connected in that moment to something higher, and therefore, if anything should happen, it's sort of their fault. It's this person's own choices that would have led to something detrimental, chas v'shalom, happening to them. And that's the teaching of Reb Chanina ben Chanichai. We're going to see that Rabbi Nachman will turn this entire teaching mamish on its head in a wondrous way. But we'll get there at the end of the lesson. We started yesterday with the Rebbe telling us something extraordinarily deep. The Rebbe told us that although there are those that say that the world is mechuyev hametzias, that the world always was, is, and always will be, the world is true reality. In truth, says the Rebbe, of course there's only one mechuyev hametzias, and that's a terminology that we use to refer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In fact, Al Pi Kabbalah, this that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is called Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei is... Open the windows. I don't mind. All right, it is... Thank you. Talking about the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is. That's the Shem HaEtzem, right? The Shem HaEtzem means it's the Shem Havaya. It's the name that connotes the pure existence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The fact that Hashem exists. That's the most essential thing that you can say. You cannot say that Hashem doesn't exist, right? We can say or can't say very few things about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But the one thing that we can say is Shem Havaya. Hashem's essential name means Hashem is. Hashem is Yud Kei Vav Kei. All of the other Shemus of Hashem describe what Hashem does, or different stages of this that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world. The Shem Ekya, the Shem Elokah, the Shem Elokim, all these Shemus talk about Pu'ulas of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, meaning out of the outgrowth of Yud Kei Vav Kei comes all the different layers of reality. But the Shem Havaya is that Hashem is. That correlates to the fact that Hashem is the Mechuyev Hametzias. He is true reality. And everything else is what's called Efshari Hametzias, right? These are the two themes that we're going to keep on coming back to. Mechuyev Hametzias versus Efshari Hametzias. Then the Rebbe told us, well, where do we have this mistake that the world is Mechuyev Hametzias? Says the Rebbe, something very delicate. After Klal Yisrael is emanated into the world, now Kiviyachal HaKadosh Baruch Hu is mukhrach to keep the world going, because that's part and parcel of his decision to emanate Klal Yisrael into the world. Because Klal Yisrael serve a function. We need to live as human beings in an Olam Asiyah. We need to interact with Daimim Tzameach Chaim Medaber in order to do what we're supposed to do, which is essentially to turn this world into a Mishkan for HaKadosh Baruch Hu by virtue of taking Kol Nadiv Libai, right, which is all of the aspects that HaKadosh Baruch Hu expressed out of his heart throughout all of creation, V'haya Mishkan Echad. To be able to see a unified tapestry, gesundheit, woven out of all of the different aspects and all the different threads, gesundheit stark, of all of creation. Because the world and the worlds and all the different layers of the Seder Shtalshalis are going to be required for nishmas Yisrael that were alle b'machshava tchila, that came into the divine mind long before anything else. Memela now, again, klapi the ratzon of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to create the world. Now, the world is mamish mechuyev mitzvos because Hashem needs a world in order for Klal Yisrael to do their purpose. So the world takes on a very real, cemented, significant form of existence, klape Klal Yisrael. Once HaKadosh Baruch Hu decides to begin this project, right, of what called Am Yisrael, right, and called bringing this nation into the world who throughout 6,000 years is going to bring the world closer to the Elef HaShvi until finally the Tikkun is made, Memela, they need all of the tools of their craft. They need all of reality so that there should be an oilam to be misakin, l'sakin oilam, b'malchus shakai. But the Rebbe says certainly it's true that Am Yisrael themselves are going to be b'chinas efshari hametzias, because the Rebbe said ki haya be'efsharusal hatzilam levaram oisha loy levaram. HaKadosh Baruch Hu could have chosen to create them or not to create them. Once he chooses freely to create them, so then everything becomes mechuyev hametzias because it is taloi on his ratzon. So the end of the shir yesterday, I mentioned this debate, right, that's happening in the online arena where different rabbanim are prominent online rabbinical figures and have YouTube channels and YouTube videos. And the debate is around the concept of whether our existence is negea la'atzmusa yizbarach, right? Whether HaKadosh Baruch Hu's desire, taiva, or need, so to speak, to create the world is negea in atzmus. Whether that reaches back to an ultimate necessity. We spoke about why one would want to suggest such a thing. Obviously, it would seem to make our existence much more significant, right? If it reaches to an ultimate point rather than sort of like an arbitrarily chosen will, for sure. And we discussed the challenges to that approach, which are many, right? Namely, first and foremost, primarily, is that you're going to be hard pressed to explain how there is within the infinite, the kol yachal, an element of hechrich regarding his ratzon. Right? It's going to be hard to be able to point to and explain how within the infinite there is like he cannot not choose this. Right? Like it's a form. It would seem to introduce a form of limitation. Right? That he had to. He needed this, and without this, something would have been fundamentally missing. And so there are benefits on either side, namely on the second side, we preserve HaKadosh Baruch Hu shleimus. On the other side, it's a suggestion of our ultimate significance, and this is a raging debate online, like I mentioned yesterday, a few of the names that are involved. I pointed yesterday to a word in the Rebbe, which is a really important word, where the Rebbe seems to make like a little bit of a concession toward the side that there's something deeper going on here. When the Rebbe says, "Achtekev kishenisratze HaKadosh Baruch Hu lahatzel nishmas Yisrael," the Rebbe refers to the ratzon of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to emanate Klal Yisrael not as kisheratza when he wanted, but kishenisratze, right? Which almost sounds like a movement within the divine, right? Kiviyachol kishenisratze when he was made to want, right? Nisratza is to be acted upon, right? Ratza is to nisratza when he. So what's going on? So I noted yesterday that just al pi pshat, it would seem that the Rebbe is speaking to us about the ultimate free choice that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has, that we need to believe that HaKadosh Baruch Hu acts freely. And then on the other hand, the Rebbe sort of leaves the door open to let us know yesh mashu amok yoter, right? There's something deeper going on here. So I want to focus on this for a minute, and this is perhaps one of the deepest things that we'll learn in the whole series, but likely the deepest thing that we've learned until now. And it needs a lot of hakshava very sensitively. And I spent a lot of time yesterday thinking about this. And I actually had an interaction with Ramata Frank. Some of the Chaver know is a very, very special mashpia. I went back and forth with him and I shared my thought, and he replied, and he doesn't reply like this very often. He said, Dvarim pliyim amukim niflaim v'neiraim. on the thing that I'm about to present. So listen to this carefully. And Hashem Atav Yechaper, we're speaking now about Devarim Ha'omdim Berum Shalaylam. Like, it's way too early in the morning to be talking about things like this now. It's beyond. I mean, this is it. We're talking about the pinnacle of reality, right? We're talking about the Olam HaMelbush, right? Now we're, because we've been progressing, right? We spoke about Chacham Adina, and then went to Memtes Chalapani, and now we're talking about Ruma Shalaylam. You have to be very, very careful, and I can't even say any words. We're just saying words to try to understand. But fundamentally, we can't understand. We can't understand any of this. So listen carefully. In Torah Memtes, we took a process of the divine, Kiviyachol, which was R Ein Sof Chal Lapanekav, and we read that into the human condition, right? We took that process and we put it into the human being's experience of Lahavius R Ein Sof, needing to make a tzimtzum. We spoke about what that means in various ways, and then we can build a kav, right, within that experience. And we spoke about that again and explained it in a number of different directions, but that was the general mahalach. That was Memtes. Then in Torah Nun Aleph, we spoke about our own experience of Bechira, there being a realm of Kedusha, and then our abiding in a realm of Tumatara, and then needing to make a Bechira in Tahara, which, like we said, reflects the world of Kedusha. And here we come to Torah and Beis, where we're speaking again about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And here I want to suggest the following thing. Again, I have a sort of haskama, from Rav Mata. I couldn't say this on my own, so I had to check it. And he seemed to appreciate it. And again, it's called B'derech Efsher. Mamish Efshari HaMetzias. This is B'derech Efsher. I'm not even sure I understand it, to be totally honest with you. I'm sharing what came into my heart and mind. B'derech Efsher Mamish. Everything we say is B'derech Efsher, but this for sure. There's a fundamental problem in the beginning of Torah and Beis that should be extremely glaring. And the problem is like this. We just finished in Torah and Aleph talking about how by HaKadosh Baruch Hu there's a realm of Kedusha, and the realm of Kedusha is the realm of singularity. And in the realm of singularity, what did we learn? There is absolutely no what? What is there none of? Where everything is one?
Sheker.
There's no sheker.
Yeah.
There's no bechira. There's no choice. Right? In the realm of Kedusha, the Rebbe went at length to tell us, Ein shum bechira, lo shayich bechira. Only bechinas echad, what only minakoyach, ala poyal, said the Rebbe, there are shnei devarim. Oz shayich bechira. But in a place of Kedusha, ain't shayich koyed b'briya. Says there's no, bechira is not shayich. Then the Rebbe goes like less than a page later, and he tries to sell me in the beginning of Torah and Beis that that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is mechuyev hametzias, and he freely chose to create the world. Hayil levarim or shalai levarim. He could create the world. He could not create the world. What's going on? How? How is there an efsharis by HaKadosh Baruch Hu not to create the world? If you just told me in Torah and Aleph that there's a realm of Kedusha where klape human choices, in that place there is no Bechira, so much so that we said that even in our experience of Bechira in Tumatara, the minute we choose Tahara, Memeiletz Nizgala, that there was never a Ma'alichba. It's the next Torah, right? So obviously you have to learn them in juxtaposition, which is the Mahalach that we've been taking the whole time. So listen to the following thing. Again, I don't understand this at all, but I believe that there's MS to it. Ask for Siyata D'Shmaya to be able to explain it properly. it would appear that there are two realms of reality. There's the reality of HaKadosh Baruch Hu turning toward existence. Where in our experience, given our perception of reality, we understand that in as much as you speak about something that is kayam, which is the mechuyev hametzias, there exists the concept of ikiyum. Not that there's something else by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Listen to this very, very carefully. The minute that you talk about something that exists, memela in that moment, because you spoke about something that is, there's already the rayon, there's already the thought, the concept of EQ. Because in order to define something, it automatically carries with it a negative connotation, even though in this case that negative connotation is not shayach b'chlal. Think about this carefully. Carefully. I just told you a few minutes ago, in the beginning of Shir, that there's a distinction between Shem Havaya from everything else. Shem Havaya is the one thing you can say about HaKadosh Baruch Hu definitively. He is. He is. It's the first concept that we can have of the infinite. You can't go beyond that. You can't probe anything more existentially fundamental than existence. He is, right? What more fundamental thing are you going to say about something that exists other than it is? It flickers on the dashboard of reality, right? It's here. Okay, the minute that something is, it already carries with it the rayon, the concept of ikiyum. This is perhaps the most delicate shayrish for an other. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu creates in Torah Memtes the Cholol HaPanui, which is the shayrish for the different realm where our Bechira unfolds, it isn't something other than HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It is the presence of the absence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It is the application of the latent concept of ikiyum being manifest. Again, ikiyum having always been present in a hidden form within kiyum, even though it was not nisgala because there was not ikiyum. But on a definitive level, in order to appreciate what existence is, you need to have at least the rayon of non-existence. Is this coming across? For us as humans, that's where it starts. We're speaking in our perception of reality. In order to envision the concept of existence, I already have to have at least some sense for at least the idea of non-existence, right? Because otherwise, there's no way that I can define something fully. It's like Tanai Kafel. I'll inhale, like I need to know the yes of it and the no of it. This formulation is perhaps an articulation of the earliest shirish possible of all that is not God in the Seder Shtalshalos. In Torah Memtes, we went as far as the Chalapana. And we spoke about how Kadosh Baruch Hu creates a vacant space in himself. We spoke about the Butzina de Kardanisa, right? That lamp of darkness, of dark negative energy. Where does that come from? So the earliest articulation that I can give now in words, in theory, is it comes from the metzius of ikiyum, which is non-existence, which is latent within the reality of kiyum, of existence. Okay, this being the most fundamental shirish that you can speak about when you speak about presence or absence, and then the rest of the Seder Shtalshalos unfolds, wherein there's a chal hapanoi being the externalization, right, and manifestation of ikiyum from within the kayam, and that movement will be forever mysterious, right? How the fundamentally kayam is able to constrict. It says that's a paradox in a chanami. But then from there is nishtalshal, the whole tzad small, right? Then there's keser, right? And then there's a tzad small of bina, right? We're talking about the spheres of atzilus, even higher, adam katman, right? The earliest shrashin. And then comes the whole tzad small down through the seder shtalshalos. Then you have the world of the sphere of gevura, and then all the way down to hoid, and then all the way down to malchus. Malchus becomes the world of bria, and then bria, right? Which is itself mamish all smali because it's connected to bina. And then down to Yitzir, then down to Asiba, v'chule, 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 v'chule. All forms of din only being nishtalshal in their most fundamental, essential way. Back to where? Back to externalized ikiyum from within the kayam. So far, relatively clear? I want to say a radical thing. And again, if I didn't have askam on this, I wouldn't say it out loud. I wanted to check it by somebody. Their mother is a goyin. I'm a goyin ayla. I want to say that what the Rebbe did in Torah Memtes to apply a movement within the Ein Sof, the R Ein Sof, right, to our human experience, I want to say the relationship between Torah and Aleph and Beis is the same, but in the opposite direction. Here, we are taking what we learned in Torah Nun Aleph with regard to our experience of Bechira, and I'm going to explain it in a minute, and we're applying it back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What did we say in Torah Nun Aleph? We said in Torah Nun Aleph that if we choose the right choice from an experience of choice, that memela is megala das lemafreya, that be'emes there wasn't a second choice. Be'emes all there was elokus, all throughout. So we had the kasha, if the HaKadosh Baruch Hu is kedusha, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the realm of kadosh. So where does it come from? You say HaKadosh Baruch Hu could have created the world, could not create the world. Kadosh Baruch Hu is mamish, the realm of oneness. So I want to say that by Kadosh Baruch Hu's choosing to create or not create the world is already on a lower level, our experience of the moment where Kadosh Baruch Hu is ready to externalize enough to either continue with his existence, which I'll explain in a minute, or to allow to manifest in a fundamental way the aspect of non-existence within the fundamental existent, the mechuyev hametzias. What would be the manifestation of ikiyum at that level? Is not to create Klal Yisrael. Is not to manifest existence in this form. And that's the kitrug that we find throughout Chazal. Ma enesh kisisgrena. Well, why are you creating the human being for? There was a kitrug. The Zohar Kadosh tells us, Rosh Hashanah is din, Uzan, Azael, Kain, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, these malachim, and they're mekatrug on the creation of man. This is a bechina of the possible kitrug on the level of ikiyum, even though on the level of mechuyev mitzias, it's not externalized b'chlal. It's not really there. But it could be. It could be freely chosen. But on the level of the mechuyev mitzias freely choosing on that madrega to be megala the ikiyum, you can't speak about two choices, two levels, because it's all mechuyev mitzias. The minute HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes the choice kiviyachol, which appears to us to be a choice, to reveal Klal Yisrael in the world versus not revealing Klal Yisrael in the world, just like when we make a positive choice, it's nisgala l'mafreya that there was no other choice and all there was the realm of Kedusha. The same is true by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In as much as HaKadosh Baruch Hu chooses to create Am Yisrael from two choices, kiviyachol, it's immediately nisgala das l'mafreya that there was no choice. But there was choice, but there wasn't a choice. It depends from whose perspective. Be'emes la'amitoy, because there's a realm of Kedusha, every iterative manifestation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu choosing Gilui is going to memela snake back to the ultimate reality that there is no other choice. But the way that Hashem is going to be megala that Kedusha is through a revelation from our perspective of Tomatara. In other words, you can apply the same, and it's a bit technical, but it's extraordinarily deep. And the hashlachot are very, very powerful. The implications of this. The same way you can say about a human being that all the while that they make all the right choices and they choose Tara, all there was Kedusha the whole time. There was never any other choice. Yeah, they chose. But now, because again, now that they chose Tahara, they chose to exit Bechira. This process is happening in Neu Bay in the Ein Sof constantly. There's the generation of a realm of theoretical Kiyum, which is already in its earliest shires latent within Kiyum, and that's the point of absolute unity. Then HaKadosh Baruch Hu chooses to create Klal Yisrael. That's Tahara. Hashem is choosing revelation. Mineu Bay, in that minute, it's Niskala Das Lamafre that there was no choice. Then Hashem chooses again, right? To create Klal Yisrael. Mineu Bay, there was no choice. It's choosing Tahara, which immediately exits Bechira and goes back to the realm of the Echad Yachid Miyuchad. These two things need to be bayim ka'achas. This process happens all the time. Here's the craziest part. That's what we're about to get to inside. It's Mavur and what the Rebbe is about to write. This is extraordinarily deep. The deepest things that we've spoken about this. Sugyas. On an ultimate level, that process of Bechira in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, B'chvayda v'atzmai, Kiviyachol, is incarnated into each and every one of us as Yidden. Listen carefully. The decision to create Klal Yisrael is God's. That's Hashem's decision, Kiviyachol, where Hashem manifests an experience of Bechira and then exits it. Right, and thereby is Nizgal L'Mafreya that, of course, he needed to create Klal Yisrael. Like Klal Yisrael are part of him. Klal Yisrael, the whole process is him. It's him. Okay, but on the level where we're not quite sure about that yet, it looks like there's Bechira, there's Kiyum and Kiyum. But Kiyum doesn't really exist. It's like you're talking about the existence of non-existence, right? Right, in Eza Shehuwe, Hashem can limit himself. Okay, fine. So which one is he going to choose now? Okay, he chooses himself. Of course he always existed. That's an extension of him. Once we're brought into the world, that decision is on us. We're going to be the ones to choose, going back to Adam and Chava, given the opportunity to listen to HaKadosh Baruch Hu's command, or to act against it and eat the Eitz Hadas Tov V'Ra. If they eat the Eitz HaChaim, and they wait until Shabbos, and they don't eat the Eitz Hadas Tov V'Ra, in that minute, it's weiter the same tahalich of a Gilui Elokus that began when HaKadosh Baruch Hu chose to create Am Yisrael, and thereby to begin the whole process of the world for the purpose of Gilui. Then, if they choose to listen to the Ratzon Hashem, Again, it's Nizgala Das Lamafreya that of course this whole thing is necessary because they're channeling the light of Mechuyev HaMetzias. Their Tahara, right, freely chosen from Tumah Tahara, is a Gilui of Kedusha. That Gilui of Kedusha goes back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu's decision whether to create or not create the world based on what we would do in it. And when we choose, just like when Hashem chose to create the world, it's necessary. So now we're channeling the light of Mechuyev HaMetzias. But if we choose to go in the opposite direction, that sends a whole trigger all the way back up the channel. And from the earliest iterative manifestation kiviyachol of two decisions, whether to create or not create, we are now being megala the ikiyum aspect. And that becomes in that moment more real. Well, there is a negative impulse, right? There is an aspect where HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't seem present. In that moment, not only do you fortify your own experience of Tumah Tahara, Torah and Aleph, it goes back to the earliest shirish of choice, which is HaKadosh Baruch Hu's choice to create the world or not create the world, create or not to create the world, kiyum or ikiyum, presence or absence, and it fortifies the fact that, I don't know, this world is Efshari HaMetzias, given the fact that in this moment you've just been megaladas, that ikiyum of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the non-revelation, is a real possibility. One second. When we are fortifying this as a real possibility, that shakes the entire structure of reality. It makes reality more Efshari. When we open all the channels and we're doing what we're supposed to do, that reveals the choice that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made to create Klal Yisrael. That's a choice of Tahara. Memela, that goes back to the Sharish, and it means that it wasn't freely chosen. It was part of the Mechuyev HaMetzias all along. This, in my mind, is the word Nisratze. Nisratze it's complicated. But again, the joke here is that it's non-causal. Usually when we speak about something that's influenced by something, to do something, he's influenced by something that came before it. Here, HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the system in such a way that it's lehepech. It's the choices that will be made later that will have an impact prior to either reveal the fact of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's being Mechuyev HaMetzias, or Chas v'Shalom be mastir that, hide that, see the world as Mechuyev HaMetzias, and shut out HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which will then go back to the source and impact HaKadosh Baruch Hu's choice. I don't know if I'm making myself clear. In my mind, this makes sense, and in my mind, this is resolving the whole thing that we spoke about yesterday. Because in this sense, both are true, but in a deeper way than people usually say from the Ramchal, that's how the Ramchal would resolve this issue. For example, by saying there is the Ratzain that Hashem had to create the world, and then there's the Bal HaRatzain. In Bal HaRatzain, there's no Negia in Atzmos, all right? Because you can't say that HaKadosh Baruch Hu needs anything Mechule. In Ratzain, absolutely, of course Hashem needs, because He expressed a will. This is something even deeper. Because what we're saying now is, first of all, it's all contingent on us. Right? It's all, meaning it's contingent on our own experience and the way that we choose to live in this world. There's not a give, it's not a binary, it's not is it or isn't. It's dual realities that are going to reveal themselves within our own individual lives, minute by minute. That's A. And B, from the standpoint of making a positive choice, not only is it nogea ba'atzmos, right? Which is like, it's a gilui of atzmos. I say this carefully. It's a gilui of atzmos. In other words, the whole challenge is, well, God is up there, I'm down here, and I want to reflect on God. Does God need me or does God not need me? Am I a mamish like Hashem needed me, or you know? So then Hashem is not fully shalom because there's like a big me-shaped hole in God, you know. Until I came along, God is. We're saying lehepech. When you make a positive choice, das is God. Das is God. This itself, this is now megala that the positive choice to create Yisrael and maintain Yisrael, which was a choice of tahara from within Tumah Tahara, it was kedusha all along. There was no other option. Not because HaKadosh Baruch Hu needed this, because this is what Hashem is. But it depends on us. Which door are you opening? Did Hashem choose to create Am Yisrael out of a real choice of like he could have created us, he could have not created us, or did he choose, or didn't he choose Bechlal to create Klal Yisrael? Is this itself a Gilui Vatzmus Yisbarach? This is Nisratza. It's a partnership. Not because Hashem is lacking us, because if we so choose, we are sparks of Him already. We are agents of the revelation of Mechuyev HaMetzias. Not that God needed us. Our existence is part of the fact of God's being necessary. That's a different thing. Do you hear this? Our being is not pshat. Now we exist, and so God needed to create us. In this aspect, you're exiting Bechira in your own way, right? And in that reality, you're sending this reverse tremor all the way back up the system to the beginning, where it's Nizgala that all there is this. All there ever was is this. And this is Nisratza. Nisratza Kodesh Baruch Hu Lahatzel Nishmas Yisrael. We are the ones who are mediating that every minute. The more we choose to be Israel, the more in other words, the more we fortify our choices of Tahara from within the illusion, but which is very real from our perspective, choosing between Tumah and Tahara. We choose Tahara, the whole reality of Tumah disappears, and that goes all the way back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu's experience of Bechira, that disappears, and all that's left is Kedusha, all that's left is Echad Yachid and Yuchad, and in that sense, it's not a question of whether God needed anything or not, it's just a question of whether Hashem is or not. And on that level, Hashem is Memela, everything He created is. If we choose Tumah, it shakes the entire hierarchy of the system. Ad kan divrei ani hakatan. This is what I told Rav Mata, and he got it. He got it. Yeah.
Two questions. Number one, if we're going all the way back, then if Hashem is Kehal Yedidim, how can He even have an option of Shaka? If we're going all the way back, so if we're going further.
Yeah, because we said, and that's what I began with, that even an entity that is Kehal Yedidim, which is mamish Kehal Yedidim, part of the necessity, part of the ability to define Toiv is that there's a theory of Ra. I have to, as I have, right, it's negative theology. It's like the Rambam, right? I can know what God is by knowing what He isn't. On an existential level, there is already a rayon. Not that it exists, but there's a rayon, kolshu. That's why I'm tracing the earliest shrushim to two realities, philosophically, into one reality.
You would have to say that itself is a halal type of creation.
No, not until Hashem chooses to be Megala it. How He does that, I have no idea. That's a side pellet. How HaKadosh Baruch Hu chooses to be absent. Or that's not chooses. How HaKadosh Baruch Hu has the ability, right, to generate a realm of absence. But again, what we're saying now is very dark. What we're saying now is that based on our choices, it's megaladas l'mafreya that there is no chalal upon it. That's the whole job. You understand? When a person exits Bechira, Mimela, you were megaladas l'mafreya that what chalal upon him? This is it. This is Atzmusi Yisbarach. all along because Ein Oid Mulvadik Pshuta Imam. What I'm doing is I'm connecting Torah and Aleph with Torah and Beis. I've never seen anybody do that, right? What I'm doing is showing that the process that we just learned in Torah and Aleph with regard to our own choices is Negeya all the way back up the system to be Megala, the Achdus HaBoire, wherein the whole conversation about what Hashem needs or doesn't need, Kiviyachal, there's two things, Hashem and me, fundamentally collapses. And in that place, of course, this is Negea Ba'atzmos, because all there is Atzmos, and that reality is revealed vis-a-vis Klal Yisrael, and each member of Klal Yisrael's personally chosen choices, given their own experience in an iterative sense of Tzelem Elikim to choose Taiv. When they choose Taiv, the whole system collapses. All there was Enod Milvada, in which case you can no longer talk about what Hashem needs or doesn't need, because it's all Him. It's all within Him. That clear?
Yeah. And then on this last point, if we're living in a world now after Adam ate from the Itzadas, then we are all of Shaya Miriam, because he messed up and we're all from that.
In a sense, but remember, in order for Adam Rishon to have had the ability to choose, right, which is a conversation of itself, but assuming that he had Bechira to choose, so then that Metzius was already brought into reality. In as much as HaKadosh Baruch Hu generated a world built on presence and absence, that was the choice. Me and you, coming post Adam and Chava, have more of a job to do, right? It's thicker. The Hester is thicker, and so
Side of Sheker.
I'm not sure if we're from that side of Sheker. Meaning, you would have, presumably had children, before that. I don't know if we come from that. Because again, there's not any fundamentally different reality that I have when I make a choice that Adam and Chava had when they made a choice. Because we come, Kain is something else. Kain is Kinadim Sabusa, like that's the Klipa, But assuming that, it's different. It's different. It's different. It's just more difficult for us, right? The Hester is much thicker than it was. Imagine Adam Rishon is a Navi. Adam Rishon is talking right to HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Mamash Yitzir Kappa of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So I would say on that level, but I wouldn't draw a fundamental distinction. I would say that the choice is iterative. It's the same. Anytime I stand in front of a choice, I'm standing in front of the Eitz Hadas Tevirah and the Eitz Chaim. And it's the same process. Yeah.
Isn't it fundamentally about the distinction between what revelation, meaning how we with our sense can perceive Hashem and the whole world with Hashem from our perspective. So revelation and Yud-Kei Vov-Kei, because Yud-Kei Vov-Kei is beyond what we can perceive as a revelation.
Yes.
So his Yud-Kei Vov-Kei is the
essence.
Right. Revelation is how we can enable Hashem within the world of, or the conception of human beings. Mm-hmm. And if that's the case, does that not mean, and I'm not trying to be, does that not mean that on other planets, in other worlds, there could have been other creation by Yud-Kei Vov-Kei?
That's for sure true.
Similar revelations, but
that's for sure true. I'm not sure how it's so relevant to what we're talking about. That that's a separate conversation. It's for sure true. HaKadosh Baruch Hu chose very specifically. We learned that recently. Hashem chose to create what He created for reasons that are known to Him alone. And there could have been infinite. Hashem is infinite. He could do infinite things. Here we're speaking within our Seder Shtalshalos that we know, right? In our Tzelem Elikim. Are there other realities? It's a conversation. Whether there are, whether there aren't, doesn't matter. I'm talking within our Seder Shtalshalos, Yisrael Allah b'mashavat chila, what our Kadosh Baruch Hu's thoughts were, so to speak, and intentions were, and Ratzon was for the unfolding in this reality. The point that we're making here, just bring it back to this, if you want to use this terminology of Yud-Kei Vov-Kei and Revelation, Yud-Kei Vov-Kei is the realm of Kedusha, Revelation, or non-revelation, is the world of Tahara and Tumah. To the extent that we choose Tahara, that's a Gilui Atzmusi Yisbarach Yud-Kei Vov-Kei, and the revelation of Ein Od Milvadai, and therefore choice collapses. This is all a fundamental necessity because it's mamish godly, and in that sense, Hashem is the Mechuyev HaMetzias, and that reality is ultimately revealed. If we choose non-revelation, this brings things back up and fortifies a level of the process of creation, because now we fortified creation, like, oh, there's two separate things. So then we look up and we say, okay, well, this must have been created somewhere, right? So at what point was it created? When was time created? Then you're looking at HaKadosh Baruch Hu's freely chosen choice of either to create the world or not to create the world. Then there's two realms. There's the Mechuyev HaMetzias, there's Efshari HaMetzias. What we're saying is, what the Rebbe is trying to communicate, it's a very, very deep thing, is that what we do in this world is going to impact the whole structure of reality, to either cause for our experience of the world, Klape Hashem, to be Efshari HaMetzias, Klape the Mechuyev HaMetzias, and therefore Hashem could have chose to create it or chose not to create it, because it is further a Giloi of that which is possible by the Ein Sof in a philosophical way, right, which is non-existence, and then it just carries along that, it fortifies that level of reality. Or lahapich, it is fortifying as an extension of the Mechuyev HaMetzias, that not only is it true that Hashem chose to create the world, Mechuyev HaMetzias, but beyond that, this world is part and parcel of Chiyuv HaMetzias. That's likishenisratze. Kishenisratze HaKadosh Baruch Hu lahatzal nishmas Yisrael. That brings about the true reality that, of course, Am Yisrael are Mechuyev HaMetzias, and the world is Mechuyev HaMetzias. Because the world is needed for Am Yisrael, and Am Yisrael are needed for God. Because Am Yisrael are a Gilui of Elokus. Who's going to mediate that? Me and you. Every second. Every choice that we make. Okay, this is a very deep thing. Not going to spend more time on it. If you didn't get it the first time, highly recommended to listen to the recording. This is a extremely delicate, nuanced, and important point that comes out, by the way, dafka, because we're learning Likutei Moharan the way that we're learning Likutei Moharan. If we weren't learning it this way, we would not see that. We would not have this question. Because imagine you just jumped into Torah and Beis, not having fresh come off of Torah and Aleph. You wouldn't be in the sugya of bechira, non-bechira. You would just take what the Rebbe says and learn it. But here, because we're learning from Torah and Aleph to Torah and Beis, there's behechrich. There's a kasha, right? That's glaring, and you have to resolve that. You have to figure that out. How could there be bechira when HaKadosh Baruch Hu is one? Right? And then we're learning, well, the Bechira bit is as illusionary by Hashem as it is for all of us. And when we make our choice that's positive, that's an extension of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's choice to create, which then collapses choice, and is Megala, the Echad, Yachad, and Miyuchad, revealing that everything is Mechuyev HaMetzias, and that is our task. Let's just read one more paragraph, very briefly, just to do a little bit further today. Umizeh, let's continue. Because what they do is they go to the opposite extreme. They cut Hashem out of the picture, and they say, no, the world is Mechuyev HaMetzias, without connecting it back to a freely chosen ratzon that becomes fortified through a positive Gilui of reality. Hashem is Mechuyev HaMetzias. Everything else fundamentally in and of itself, at least in potential, is shutting away Hashem's presence. Memela, there's a distinction between God and His creations. Memela, Hashem is Mechuyev HaMetzias. Everything else is Efshari HaMetzias. The kavana for which the world was created and for which Yisrael were created within it, so that Am Yisrael should do what Hashem's ratzon is. So that they should choose to leave their experience of cheshbonos rabim, they should leave their experience of choice, and that they should go back to the root. Listen to this carefully. They should go back and recognize their inclusion within the atzmus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, not the ratzon, the atzmus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in which case they realize they are part of the Mechuyev HaMetzias, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu's choice to create them was a Gilui of Atzmusa Yisbarach, Ubishvil Ze Nivra HaKol. And because of this, everything was created. Nimsa. Kol Mashi Yisrael Oisem Ritzon Shalmakam and Echlal Misharsham, the more that we choose properly Tahara from Tumah, and thereby in that moment we become Nichlal in our Shayrish, Shu Mechuyev HaMetzias, in the true reality, the more that we're plugged into Mechuyev HaMetzias, the more real the world has to become. Because then the world becomes that much more necessary, given the fact that Klal Yisrael are necessary, given the fact that Hashem is necessary, and we're a Gilui of Him, and the worlds are a Gilui of us. It's layers of an onion. When I say layers of an onion, it's even deeper than links in a chain. Links in a chain means the first link is Mechuyev HaMetzias, the second chain, the last chain is Efshari HaMetzias, and the link connecting the world of resolute Efshari HaMetzias to the world of Chayev HaMetzias is Klal Yisrael in the middle. Here we're saying it's deeper. Listen to this, very, very deep. What the world is to Klal Yisrael is to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The same way that when we experience reality in a way of Chayev HaMetzias, the world becomes Mechuyev. The world becomes, it fortifies the world's Chayev HaMetzias. When we are serving the purpose of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we are becoming Mechuyev HaMetzias. Hashem creates layers of an onion. Hashem is at the core Chayev HaMetzias. He creates Am Yisrael, the next layer, so that they should recognize consciously that they're nizbatel into Chayev HaMetzias, thus extending the realm of Chayev HaMetzias. We call that Dir B'Tachtonim. Then, if Klal Yisrael are in the right consciousness, choosing properly as a Gilui of Alakos, they're able to recognize consciously as human beings that everything is Chayev HaMetzias. The whole reason that the creation was created is for this purpose. Rak b'shvil zeh mechuyev Hashem yisbarach kiviyachol. Whoa, mechuyev. Listen to this. Rak b'shvil zeh mechuyev Hashem yisbarach kiviyachol. Because it's always every moment in iterative transition and oscillation between does he need to create, doesn't he need to create, are we needed, are we not needed, are we part of him, are we not part of him, does he exist, does he not exist. This moment that includes all possibility is b'shvil zeh mechuyev Hashem yisbarach kiviyachol. He needs kiviyachol. Does he need, doesn't he need? Nisratze livrei ulekayim kol ha'olam es b'shvil Yisrael kedei sheyaser ritzonu k'nizgalel. Okay, Amik mi insano. I mean, this is the deepest of the deep. Very, very delicate. If you need, try to go back. I might need to go back and listen to this again and try to get further clarity. But Ezras Hashem, given the fact that some of us will have the privilege of traveling to Rabbeinu HaKadosh in just a number of days, and we'll carry everybody else with us along, obviously, in our minds and our hearts, Shir will continue. But Ezras Hashem, next week, we'll see how I'm feeling. On Sunday, it'll probably be completely gone. We'll see if we can do Monday morning, but certainly Tuesday morning, we will continue. But Ezras Hashem Yisbarach. Thank you so much for listening and for learning with me, and wishing everyone an amazing rest of your week.
על כל נשימה שאני